At 4:33 local time, the Sea of Japan, 320 nautical miles southwest of Vladivostok, is producing the specific operational conditions that ASW planners describe as challenging and that ASW crews describe as November. The sky is overcast at 4,000 feet. The sea state is 3 meters, significant enough to limit the efficiency of sonobuoy deployment at the lower end of the speed range, not so severe that it prevents it. The water temperature at the surface is 8 degrees Celsius. Below the surface, the thermal structure is the specific thermal structure of the Sea of Japan in November, which has been documented in hydrographic surveys since the 19th century and which still produces, on any given night, acoustic propagation characteristics that require the current survey data rather than the historical average to plan correctly. The deep sound channel in this part of the Sea of Japan sits at approximately 700 meters, accessible to a platform that can reach that depth, which the Sinpo-class submarine of the Korean People's Army Navy can, technically, and which the prosecution architecture that is about to reach full operational density above this patch of ocean is designed to exploit. At 4:33, 3 U.S. Navy assets are converging on a datum established 2 hours and 11 minutes earlier, and the convergence is not accidental. The datum is the product of a broadcast band acoustic event logged by the broad ocean surveillance architecture. At 2:22, a transient consistent with a mechanical event on a submarine of the class and size that the acoustic library associates with the Sinpo-class platform. The transient lasted 6 seconds. 6 seconds is not a long time for an acoustic event, but 6 seconds of a specific frequency pattern at a specific amplitude in a specific geographic area is enough for the broad ocean architecture to produce a datum, and this datum had been assessed by the duty analyst at the Naval Intelligence Support Center, cross-referenced against the Sinpo's known operational pattern in this area, and elevated to a prosecutable datum within 17 minutes of the initial log. The 3 assets, USS Fitzgerald, hull number DDG-62, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, arrived at the datum area at 3:11 and has been running a barrier track since. A P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft from Fleet Air Wing Atsugi has been airborne since 1:45 and arrived at the datum area at 2:48 before USS Fitzgerald, and has been working a sonobuoy pattern for 1 hour and 45 minutes. And at 60,000 feet above all of them, above the weather, above the sonobuoy pattern, above the surface ship's radar horizon, by approximately 470 miles, an MQ-4C Triton, broad area maritime surveillance unmanned aircraft has been on station since 23:55 the previous evening, which was before the datum was even established, which is the specific operational advantage of a platform that maintains persistent wide-area surveillance regardless of whether a specific datum has yet been produced. The MQ-4C Triton. This is a platform that operates in the specific space between what satellites can do and what manned aircraft can do, which is to say, it can remain in one place for more than 30 hours. It can cover an area of approximately 2,000 nautical miles per sensor sweep, and it does not require a crew that gets tired or hungry or whose attention wanders at 4:33 after 7 hours on station. The Triton's AN/ZPY-3 multi-function active sensor radar covers the surface picture from 60,000 feet with a geometric advantage that altitude provides against surface and near-surface contacts. Its electro-optical and infrared sensors image surface vessels at this altitude. Its signals intelligence payload collects electromagnetic emissions across a wide frequency range from an altitude that provides line-of-sight coverage to emission sources that lower altitude platforms would miss due to geometric obstruction. And its data link provides everything it collects, surface picture, imagery, signals intelligence, to every platform in the prosecution architecture in near real time, which is what turns three separate assets into a coordinated prosecution network rather than three separate assets, looking at the same water from different altitudes. At 4:33, the prosecution network had been building a picture for 1 hour and 45 minutes. The picture was mostly absence, the specific absence of acoustic contacts on the P-8A's sonobuoy field, the absence of surface returns from the Triton's radar consistent with a snorkeling submarine, the absence of anything definitive in USS Fitzgerald's SQ-53C hull sonar that resolved into a prosecutable contact. Absence, in anti-submarine warfare, is not absence of information. It is information about where the submarine is not, and information about where the submarine is not is what allows the search area to be progressively reduced from the initial datum uncertainty circle, which at 1 hour and 45 minutes elapsed from the datum, was approximately 40 nautical miles in radius, accounting for maximum Sinpo speed, to something smaller. At 4:33, USS Fitzgerald's SQ-53C produced something that was not absence, a low-frequency broadband increase bearing 042, range approximately 8 nautical miles. Not a contact, an anomaly. The sonar supervisor had been watching this bearing for 22 minutes with the attention of a person who has learned from training and from experience that low-frequency broadband increases in the Sea of Japan at this hour in November are not always geological, not always biological, and not always explainable by the background noise model. Sometimes they are submarines. The specific increase at bearing 042 was not at a level that produced a tonal classification. It was at a level that produced a bearing. A bearing is not nothing. The ASW coordinator called it to the P-8A tactical coordinator via the direct tactical link at 04, 33, and 40 seconds. The P-8A tactical coordinator repositioned 2 buoys onto the bearing within 4 minutes. At 4:38, the first repositioned buoy produced a contact. Narrowband tonal at 39 Hz, the Sinpo's library entry frequency for the same auxiliary machinery signature that the JMSDF prosecution in the Yellow Sea had found at 41 Hz 3 months prior. 39 Hz versus 41 Hz. 2 Hz difference. The acoustic library had a note on this. The frequency difference was consistent with a temperature-dependent variation in the auxiliary machinery's resonance, produced by the water temperature differential between the Sea of Japan in November and the Yellow Sea in the same month. The library had predicted that the Sinpo's signature in the Sea of Japan in November would be near 39 Hz. The contact was at 39 Hz. Contact buoy Gulf, narrowband tonal at 39 Hz, bearing consistent with Fitzgerald's 042 anomaly. Confidence? Probable. The words that make ASW coordinators exhale. At 4:39, the Triton's signals intelligence payload, which had been monitoring the electromagnetic spectrum above the datum area continuously since 2355, logged an emission. Brief, 1.4 seconds, on a frequency that the signals library associated with a low probability of intercept data, burst transmission used by the Sinpo for communication with shore-based command. The emission was at extremely low power, consistent with a submarine antenna at snorkel mast depth, making a very brief transmission on a frequency designed to minimize detection. The Triton's altitude provided the geometric line of sight to the emission source that a lower platform would have missed due to the Earth's curvature. From 60,000 feet, the Triton's signals intelligence aperture had line of sight to a point on the ocean surface at this range that a P-8A at 2,000 feet would not have. The 1.4-second transmission was in the collection record. The transmission's characteristics, frequency, duration, power level, modulation, were consistent with a Sinpo communications system that the library had been building since 2015 from collection events of varying quality. This collection, 1.4 seconds from overhead at line-of-sight geometry, at a signal strength that the Triton's altitude produced, was the cleanest single-event characterization of this communication system that the library had received. The transmission had been made, presumably, because the Sinpo's commanding officer had assessed that the low probability of intercept frequency and the brief duration made the risk of detection acceptable. The Triton's presence at 60,000 feet, with its geometric advantage over the Earth's curvature, was not a factor in that risk assessment. Triton has a 1.4-second LPI transmission, bearing consistent with the contact position. The Triton's ground control station at Misawa reported on the tactical net. Signal characteristics matched the Sinpo communication library entry. This is the best single-event characterization we've collected against this platform's comm system. The ASW coordinator looked at the picture. Broadband anomaly from Fitzgerald. 39 Hz tonal from the P-8A's repositioned buoy. 1.4-second LPI transmission from the Triton. 3 independent sensors. 3 data points pointing at the same bearing. The position solution was building from 3 different altitudes, 3 different physics, 3 different collection architectures, all arriving at the same answer within a 40 nautical mile area that had been a datum uncertainty circle 90 minutes earlier. Cross-bearing solution from 3 sensors. Position ellipse approximately 3 nautical miles by 2 nautical miles. Confidence high. Here is the vulnerability that the Sinpo's commanding officer had not fully accounted for. And here is why the prosecution architecture's 3 altitude, 3 physics approach was producing what it was producing at 4:39. The Sinpo-class submarine operates at the intersection of several tactical realities that are individually manageable and collectively difficult. Its acoustic signature is manageable. The auxiliary machinery tonal is quiet. The temperature-dependent frequency variation is documented in the library, and an experienced crew can reduce the signature at the cost of operational capability. Its communications requirement is manageable. Low probability of intercept frequencies, brief transmissions, timing discipline. Its depth maneuvering capability is manageable. The Sea of Japan's thermal structure provides acoustic concealment opportunities that a disciplined crew can exploit. Each of these individually is a reason for the prosecution to be hard. The prosecution architecture of 3 sensors at 3 altitudes addressing 3 different physics removes the individual manageability of each. The acoustic signature that is quiet enough to evade a hull sonar at moderate range is still audible to a sonobuoy at close range. The LPI communication that is brief enough to avoid a low-altitude collection platform is not brief enough to avoid a platform with geometric line of sight from 60,000 feet. The thermal layer that provides acoustic concealment from hull sonars does not prevent broadband anomalies from propagating along specific bearings that a second sonar on a different platform can bear line from a different position. 3 sensors, 3 physics, 3 geometries. The Sinpo's commanding officer had managed his signature against the acoustic threat. He had managed his communications against the intercept threat. He had not, presumably, known that a 3rd sensor at 60,000 feet was providing the geometric advantage that made the LPI transmission visible. This is the specific operational value of the 3-altitude prosecution architecture. No single sensor is necessary. Any 2 sensors are useful. All 3 sensors simultaneously produce something that the target cannot simultaneously manage because managing against one sensor requires behaviors that expose the target to another. At 4:45, USS Fitzgerald's ASW coordinator updated the surface plot with a 3-sensor cross-bearing solution. The commanding officer was in CIC at 4:47. He looked at the position solution, 3 nautical miles by 2 nautical miles, at a position bearing 042 from Fitzgerald's current position, approximately 7.5 nautical miles. He looked at the contact's assessed depth. The broadband anomaly's bearing rate, combined with the sonobuoy tonal's signal level, produced a depth estimate of approximately 90 to 110 meters. Below the thermocline, below the layer where surface ship sonars produce their best performance, above the deep sound channel. In the depth band where the Sinpo operates when it is attempting to use the thermal structure for acoustic concealment. P-8A Fitzgerald, Contact Solution 3 Alpha. Request you prosecute with 2 additional buoys on this solution below layer configuration. Fitzgerald P-8A, Wilco. 2 buoys below layer in 3 minutes. Below layer buoys are deployed to operate at depth below the thermal layer that limits surface sonar performance. They are more expensive than standard buoys. They are limited in quantity on a single aircraft, and they are the tool that converts a probable contact above the layer into a confirmed contact below it. The P-8A had 12 below-layer buoys remaining. 2 of them went into the water at 4:48 at positions calculated from the 3-sensor solution to place them at below-layer depth within the 2 nautical mile ellipse that the solution defined. At 4:51, the first below-layer buoy reported a contact. The 39 Hz tonal, now from below the thermal layer, at a signal level considerably higher than the above-layer buoy had produced, because the below-layer geometry removed the transmission loss that the thermal layer imposed on upward propagating acoustic energy. The contact was in the below-layer water. The contact was where the 3-sensor solution said it was. The classification confidence upgraded from probable to confirmed. Confirmed contact, Sinpo-class assessed, bearing 245 from buoy hotel below, range estimated 600 meters, depth estimated 95 to 100 meters. Confidence, confirmed, confirmed. The 2 words that the ASW coordinator had been working towards since 2:22. 2 hours and 29 minutes of prosecution, from datum to confirmed contact. The 3 sensors had compressed what would have been, in a single sensor prosecution in the Sea of Japan in November, a considerably longer timeline. At 4:53, USS Fitzgerald's commanding officer transmitted the contact report to 7th Fleet and to the JMSDF coordination channel simultaneously, because the bilateral coordination protocol that the previous Sinpo prosecution had established remained in effect, and the JMSDF had a legitimate operational interest in the confirmed position of the Sinpo-class submarine's current operating area. The report noted the position, depth, assessed course, east-southeast at 4 knots, and the 3-sensor confirmation methodology. It was the most precisely positioned initial confirmed contact on a Sinpo-class that either Navy had achieved, because the 3-sensor cross-bearing from 3 different collection physics produced a position solution at a precision that any single sensor would have required considerably more time and buoys to achieve. The Triton had been at station for 5 hours and 34 minutes at the time of contact confirmation. It would remain at station for approximately 18 more hours. During those 18 hours, it would continue providing the surface and signals intelligence picture that had made the 3-sensor solution possible, would track any changes in the contact's behavior that produced observable emissions at any sensor, and would be available for the cross-bearing roll again if the Sinpo's course change placed it in a geometry where the 3-sensor solution could be refreshed. An aircraft that needs no rest and no refueling for 30 hours is not the most exciting asset in the prosecution architecture. It is the asset that is there when the datum is established, when the prosecution begins, when the contact is confirmed, and when the handoff to the next prosecution cycle is needed. A continuous presence that the previous prosecution architecture, before the Triton, could not provide from a single asset. What did the Triton contribute that the two-platform prosecution couldn't have done? The Fitzgerald's commanding officer asked the ASW coordinator during the post-confirmation brief. Two things, sir. The LPI transmission characterization. The geometry at 60,000 feet gave us line of sight to a transmission that a P-8A at any operationally useful altitude would have been below the horizon for. That's the best single-event characterization of the Sinpo comm system we've collected, and the continuous surface picture from datum establishment. Triton was on station before the datum. It had the negative surface intelligence that told us the Sinpo wasn't snorkeling in the first 2 hours, which shaped the below-layer prosecution approach earlier than it would have been without that surface picture. The surface picture from before the datum. Yes, sir. The 2 hours of no snorkel confirmation from Triton told us the contact was on AIP or battery, not snorkeling. That compressed the depth search by eliminating the shallow search and focusing below the layer earlier. Without Triton's pre-datum surface picture, we would have searched shallow first. Finding nothing shallow, then transitioning below layer, would have added approximately 40 minutes to the prosecution timeline. 40 minutes. The commanding officer noted this in the way that commanding officers note contributions that do not produce the dramatic moment, but produce the compression of the timeline that makes the dramatic moment arrive earlier. The Triton had not made the contact. The P-8A's buoy had made the contact. The Triton had contributed the pre-datum surface picture that shaped the search geometry and the LPI characterization that provided the third sensor bearing. Both contributions were enabling contributions. They enabled a better prosecution rather than producing the confirmation themselves. Enabling contributions are the most valuable contributions in multi-sensor architectures because they are the ones that the architecture is built around and that the system's operators are least likely to narrate in a way that makes them legible. The LPI transmission characterization was in the intelligence system at 0455, 4 minutes after contact confirmation, transmitted from the Triton's ground control station at Misawa, directly to the appropriate recipients. The 1.4-second event was in the library. The frequency, duration, power level, and modulation were now primary data entries rather than estimated values. Korean Central News Agency had nothing to say about submarine operations in the Sea of Japan, because the Korean Central News Agency has never had anything to say about submarine operations in the Sea of Japan, and this posture has been consistent across an operational history that is longer than most of the current collection architecture has been operational. The silence is professional. It does not affect what the three-sensor prosecution architecture produces in the water above the Sinpo's current operating area. And the three-sensor prosecution architecture does not require the Korean Central News Agency's acknowledgement to function. USS Fitzgerald's log for the period read, 0222 datum established. 311 Fitzgerald on barrier track. 433 broadband anomaly. 042 range 8 miles. 438 P-8A buoy gulf 39 Hz tonal probable. 439 Triton LPI transmission 1.4 seconds. 448 below layer buoys deployed. 451 confirmed contact. Sinpo-class 95 to 100 meters, east-southeast, 4 knots. Contact report transmitted 453. 3-sensor prosecution, Fitzgerald SQS-53C bearing P-8A AQS Triton SIGINT. The intelligence annex was 6 pages. The 6th page was the Triton LPI characterization, with the note that it was the best single event collection against this communication system since 2021, rated as primary data at the transmission characterization confidence level that a 1.4-second collection at this signal quality produces. The Sea of Japan at 4:51 contained a confirmed Sinpo-class submarine at 95 to 100 meters, course east-southeast, speed 4 knots. 3 sensors at 3 altitudes had confirmed it from a datum established 2 hours and 29 minutes earlier. The Triton would be at station for 18 more hours. The P-8A had 11 below-layer buoys remaining. USS Fitzgerald had the confirmed contact bearing on its sonar. The prosecution continued. The Triton watched. The library updated. Bye for now.